No,
Hmm.
no, I was here. Just
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, no, but thank God it all went well. So, Fritz, I'm happy to tell you that Shuli, is my Shuli still on?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Shuli, could you tell everyone where we're at with the book?
Oh,
Okay.
About the last correction and what went on?
Yes. So, you might not know that Rav Avi's a perfectionist. And I've been saying for a few weeks that I thought we were really, really at the end. I think now the book is actually closed. We put in a request for one last, final, really final correction, which is very small, just changing one sentence. And we hope they will do it. We don't know yet. Either way, this is our last request on the book, and then it's in the hands of the publisher. So we're pushing it to them and hoping to see it in a few months.
Okay.
I'm preemptive.
It's very exciting.
It is exciting.
I took care of a phone call for you, another broker.
That's
I'm going to call you again, Biera.
So yeah, it is exciting. It took a while to figure out. Also, you might not know that Rav Ezra, aside from being a great teacher and rabbi, also has a real talent for graphic design. And he pretty much designed the cover together with Rav Avi's daughter, Dina. And it's like shades of blue for the 5 volumes. And it's really going to be stunning, really pretty, good content, pretty on the outside, pretty on the inside. It's very exciting. I have to make some room on my bookshelf for a copy.
Well, but it's going to be a gift. The Tuesday morning class had a lot to do with the evolution of this work. What made it complicated is first of all, it's truly a very modest contribution. And the more one studies, the more, at least I know, I don't know. It's just, the Torah is it's so vast. It's like an ocean. And what I've recognized is that as I read this through by the week, because there's basically a comment, an essay on every chapter. That's why we call it a thematic commentary on the Bible. I'm always seeing how I could have worded something differently. And then I see mistakes, like this last sentence. I made a mistake. And I'm sure there are other mistakes there. So but you have to close it and we'll see what happens, God willing. So I am excited by it. I did want to mention my sister just published this book, The House of Love and Prayer. And it's a compilation of her short stories. And she actually is coming out with another novel in a couple of months. And as you know, Tova's had an enormous influence on me. And she's become so well received in writing circles. Her books are not bestsellers, but her pen is considered just fabulous. And so you just read the beginning there, my goodness, she has all kinds of words that speak about her, her writing. It's quite something, but I just want to give you a flavor of her taste. Her first short story, and then we'll go to the Torah. This is Torah too. But, Tova comes out of the Orthodox community and she went to a Haredi yeshiva, just as I did. I guess my parents struggled financially and that was the only yeshiva they could afford. I went to Torah Vodaas. That's an anti-Zionist school. And I was raised in a Zionist home. I was getting the flavor of both, but that was the only school my parents could afford. And Tova went to Beis Yaakov. Vivian, you know what that is. So this is now a real right-wing school. And Tova was brilliant. always. And at a very young age, she was wondering why she couldn't study what the boys were studying. And then she has memories of all kinds of stuff that were going on at the school, some that were very, very inappropriate in the way the male leadership ran the school. And often in her writings, which I've learned is all fiction, there's no truth to it, but when you write fiction, it has a foundation of reality. Her first story is called The Lost Girl. And who knows where this was published, in Harper's or in the Atlantic. We're not talking Jewish Action or Mishpacha, we're talking, this is the real deal. So this is a story about a bunch of girls, hundreds of girls, who the principal, who was the only male figure in the school, takes them on a hike on Lag BaOmer. And one of the girls gets lost. That's why it's called The Lost Girl. And they're looking for this girl day and night. 2 days, 3 days, 3 nights. And it's fiction, but Tova takes fiction to its extreme, and her fiction is satire. And so the media, the national media, is interested in this story. There's a girl that's missing, and the New York Times becomes involved. They're interested. There's a probing reporter. So the principal of the school, when the New York Times reporter approaches him and says, "I'm from the New York Times," he still figures he's talking to somebody from the Jewish press. He doesn't have the sophistication to understand, be careful. So he's interviewed and he says something. Look, there was proper supervision, because the Times reporter was wondering maybe there was not proper supervision. But he said something, the principal, the rabbi, very glibly, to kind of push him away. So I'm just 2 paragraphs. Then, having successfully cleared away the issue of adequate supervision, I'm picking up the story where I guess the rabbi had told the Times reporter that there was proper supervision, and the reporter's name was Sean Markowitz. Then, having successfully cleared away the issue of adequate supervision, Rabbi Berman, that's the rabbi, diplomatically attempted to draw Markowitz, that's the reporter, Sean Markowitz, closer to establish some sort of bond of kinship between them, to bring him over to their side. Quote, "What kind of name is Sean for a Jewish boy?" he inquired with amused familiarity. Most likely, the rabbi went on to conjecture, he had been named for some ancestor called Samuel, Shmuel, Shmiel, or Shmulik in the Yiddish way. Quote, "So tell me, Shmulik," speaking to a Times reporter, the rabbi said, "when was the last time you put on tefillin since your bar mitzvah?" Second, last paragraph I want to share with you. But Markowitz wasn't buying. He persisted in questioning the rabbi, not only about the supervision for the trip. Obviously, he had found the answer unsatisfactory, but also about all the other arrangements and preparations, and about the steps they had taken upon discovering that a girl was missing, until an exasperation. And really, in an attempt, misguided perhaps, but well-intentioned nonetheless, to bring some relief, some lightness to a grim situation, Rabbi Berman had come out with the statement that had gotten him into so much trouble. Ready for the statement? Here's the quote. "Look, Shmuel," he said, "we went into the woods with 300 girls and came out with 299. Now, you learned arithmetic. If you consider all girls equal so that each one is worth the same amount of points on a final exam, that would give you a score of about 99.7 out of 100. A sure A, maybe even an A plus. Not a bad showing in anyone's book. Am I right?" And then for this comment, even members of his own community had chastised him, accusing him of insensitivity, of failing to place the proper value on one human life. Rabbi Yechiel Berman had been completely misunderstood. just wanted to give you just a little flavor of it, and I can share with you. I was reading through this, and suddenly Toby took it and said, "Did you see Tova dedicated the book to you?" And I couldn't believe it. There it is on the front page, but she dedicated it in the way that nobody knows she's dedicated to me. It's all it says is to Avrami. Now, no one knows me as Avrami except for my inner family. So I was really so touched by this. So it's called The House of Love and Prayer. Actually, Tova wanted to call it Too Jewish, Too, but the publisher did away with that title, thought it wouldn't sell. On that note, let's go to some other writings. So we're going now to the Torah in the portion that we'll soon be reading. Actually, in the coming weeks, what will be read on Shabbat in Israel will be different than what is read in America, because the holiday of Shavuot falls on Friday, and in America, it's a 2-day holiday, Friday and Shabbat. But in Israel, there's only a 1-day holiday. So there's a Shavuot on Friday, and then there's Shabbat. So on Shabbat, they're going to read the portion of the week, which for them is Bamidbar. But here in America, on Shabbat, it's still the 2nd day of Shavuot. So the reading is a Shavuot reading. But I wanted to focus on Bamidbar, which in Israel, again, will be read this Shabbat, and in America, it will be read a week from Shabbat. Don't worry, we catch up. There's going to come a certain point where they'll be reading one portion, and we're going to be reading 2 portions. I would imagine that's going to be Matot Maseh. It's going to be all the way at the end of the book of Numbers. So we will catch up, and we will be reading the same portion in time. Now, when one looks at the Bible, and let me just take off my masks and tell you that rabbis, and I'm in this world. I mean, for years we've been studying together, and you're right. You're absolutely right. It's Nassau this Shabbat. Thank you, Robert. Whatever it is. It's Nassau going to be the next week. So I messed that up beautifully. The concept was right. We're reading a different portion. I just got the portion wrong, just one off. Send it to the publisher, get it corrected, Julie. Another mistake. Anyway, so naturally, we're inclined to study the narrative. When you look at the 5 books, the Pentateuch, Penta, it's 5. It's the narrative is so powerful, and we're all very familiar with the narrative, the Genesis stories, the Exodus stories. The truth of the matter is that's just a piece of the Torah. And in this thematic commentary, the idea was to find 5 larger thoughts, machshavot, conceptual ideas on each portion. And it got a little difficult when you're getting, let's say, to the building of the tabernacle. 5 essays, writing 2,000 words on that. You know, each essay about 400 or 500 words, something like that. Or you get to the korbanot, to the sacrificial service. What do you say? And what I learned is what I always knew, but really have seen so clearly. The Bible goes beyond the narrative. It has beauty in many, many other areas. Someday down the line, I want to give a session in who gave the Torah. And of course, scholars would say that it was written by many editors, and there are parts of the Torah that go back only 2,000 years, maybe 2,500 years to the time of Ezra. There's a lot of scholarly debate. I'm more of a traditionalist, and I believe the Torah goes back to Sinai. And in the end, here I am a traditionalist. Forget the open orthodoxy for a moment. I think the Torah was written by God. And the more I study it, the more I feel that there's something about the writing that is beyond the beyond. And in this portion, which we all read last week, Robert, thank you, the portion of Bamidbar, it's such a slow portion. In the first chapter deals with taking a census. The second chapter deals with how the Jewish people were organized. Where did they stand or sit or live? Where were they placed when we marched through the desert? And then you have the third chapter dealing with where the Levites were. It's a whole complex presentation. And it has its beauty, it has its teaching. And in the fourth chapter, which we're going to touch on now, there begins a discussion of the responsibilities of the sons of Levi. Now, Levi was the third son of Jacob and Leah. And Levi had three children, Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. Now, when we say these names like, whoa, this is foreign, most people, even those learned in Bible, understandably have never heard of these people. This part of the Torah is not studied as carefully. But what the lineage of Moses comes from the tribe of Levi, but of the three sons, he comes from Kahat. He literally comes from Kahat. And so there's a discussion of what the responsibilities of the family of Gershon, Kahat, and Merari were. Now, as I'm speaking, I hope no one has fallen asleep yet, because it just seems to be plotting and whoa. And I found beauty in it. The way it's all organized is quite something. And I want to focus on the responsibility of the family of Kahat. Their major responsibility was the tabernacle, which was a mobile structure because we were traveling through the desert. So it had to be undone when we were moving forward. It had to be packaged, if you will, every part of it. The altar had to be packed up. The table for the showbread had to be packed up. The menorah had to be packed up. And then someone had to be delegated to carry all of that. And it wasn't just the appurtenances. It was also the curtains and the coverings and different types of coverings. In fact, there's a lot been written about the art of the tabernacle. As one who loves art, knows very little about it, but I love art, the aesthetics of art. It's touching. And many here have shared with me. Wave That's why that's why Fern loves going to we all love going to Wave. So there were those who were carrying the artistic coverings. And then there were the real schleppers. Actually, that was the family of Merari. Maybe they're called Merari from Moror bitter. They were the schleppers. They had to carry the heavy structures, the iron, whatever it was, the metal, the beams, the sockets. I don't know if they carried it on their back. They probably had a way of transporting it on wagons that had wheels. So what the Torah tells us in chapter 4 is that the Kahatite, they were the ones who would carry all of the appurtenances. So let's take a look at chapter 4. And let's take a look at I'm looking at chapter 4. 1 second, I want to find the sentence that talks about, 1 second. I thought I had it before. Okay, let's take a look at it from sentence 17. Here's what it says. Here's what it says. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe v'el Aaron lemor. Speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, Al tachritu et shevet mishpachot hakahati mitoch haleviyim. Do not let the tribe of the Kahatite families be cut off from among the Levites. In other words, the Bible often speaks in this way. We're about ready to hear something, an instruction from God that is so critical that if this is not followed very carefully, they could be cut off. So God is telling Moses and Aaron, I want to be at peace with the Kahatite family. Al tachritu, make sure that the Kahatites, who were from the larger tribe of Levi, whose responsibility it was to carry the candelabra, the menorah, the shulchan, the table, whose responsibility was to carry the ark, the aron, and the altars. There were 2 altars. They should do this very well. V'zot asu lahem v'chayu v'lo yamutu. This is what they should do so that they should live and they should not die. Bigishtam el kodesh hakadashim. They, the Levite family of the Kahatite, they are going to be able to get close even to the ark. And the ark was not just holy, the ark was the Holy of Holies. It was in the Kodesh Kodashim, and no one could enter the Holy of Holies except for the high priest on Yom Kippur. And so what the text is going to say, Aaron uvanav yavohu v'samu otam ish ish al avodato ve'el masao. Aaron and his sons shall come and assign them every man to his work and his burden. Now, if I could face everyone for a moment, this is understood to mean that Aaron, the priest, would still be the captain of the ship, And he would instruct the Kahatites how to carry all of these holy objects. Now, why did they need instruction? Just tell them, you're going to carry the holy objects. So in the rabbinic text, there are 2 views. One view is that the Kahatites may have considered themselves unworthy to carry the ark. It was too holy. In other words, when it came to carrying the ark, I'm not going to carry the ark. It's too holy. And the result of stepping back and not assuming this responsibility would be that this holiest of holy vessels would be left unattended. Hence, the instructions have to come from Aaron as to how they should carry and divvy up the workload of carrying these objects. Hence, Moses and Aaron restore order, telling the Kahatites to assume responsibility, even if it means carrying the ark. That's one rabbinic position, which if we had time, we would study it in its original. But then there's an alternate view, and that view is the exact opposite. It's not that the Kahatites, each of them, would shy away from carrying the ark, but that was the covet, that was the honor. No, they would compete vigorously for the honor of carrying the ark. And in the process, it's not that the ark would be rejected, but the other vessels would be rejected. Each would be vying for the holiest of honors. So what is this? Well, the first interpretation is that it reflects the psyche of some of us, that when there's something extraordinarily important to do that requires reaching a higher level of action, of doing, there are some who are just not ready for it. They don't want to run from that responsibility. In life, we often see that. But then there is the latter view, quite the contrary. Everybody is looking to be the president. Everybody is looking to be the prime minister. Everybody wants to carry the ark. And I think the latter view reminds us that the honor, the prestige that one would realize when carrying the ark could push the best of people to step on each other as they're vying to carry the ark. And the task of Moses and Aaron was to remind the Kahatites to keep their pride in check. So I hope you're following this. It's for me, it's riveting. It's what did they instruct the Kahatites who carried these holy objects? One position was that Aaron and the priest had to instruct them to assume responsibility because they were running from the responsibility. And the other position was the opposite. They were all hopping to get the honor. They wanted the honor, and therefore Aaron had to slow them down and say, wait a minute, there's a certain order. You'll do this, you'll do that, and you'll take the ark, but we're not going to forget about the other objects. So I want to stop here just for a minute to get your reaction, and then I want to say one more thing that Aaron had to instruct them to do. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what it is now. If you look at the last sentence, it says, V'lo yavohu, if we can take a look at that, Shuli, sentence 20, lirot kivala et hakodesh v'metu. It's a very complicated sentence. What it says, but the they refers to the Kahatites, but the Kahatites shall not come and look as the holy is inserted, lest they die. If I can face everyone, what this means is, who would pack up the ark that stood in the Holy of Holies? Well, who would pack it? What's being said here is the Levites were not to package the ark. That had to be done by the priests. They were not even permitted to look at the nakedness, if you will, of the ark, because it had to be undone. Its curtains had to be removed. Its top had to be removed. Only Aaron, who could go in on Yom Kippur, he could be the one who was going to be involved in packaging it up. The carrying, that would be done by the Levites, but Aaron would be the one who would be instructed. It would be his responsibility to do the packaging. Let me stop here and get your reaction to all of this just for a moment.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going for when Uzzah tried to carry on and he tried to fell down, he got killed. What was he a Levite? Uzzah was a friend of David's, right?
That's very true. That's a great question. Moses was a Levite, but within the Levite family, there was a smaller group who were Levites, but they were designated to, there was a smaller group who came who came from Aaron and Aaron's descendants within the larger Levite family. They were the Kohanim, they were the priests. The truth is, I'm a Kohen. Ruby Stanley was a Kohen. And we are from the tribe of Levi. The Kohanim come from the tribe of Levi. Moshe was a Levite. Aaron was a Levite. But Aaron here had a responsibility which was even higher than Moses' responsibility. He was the priest, and it was from Aaron, from his particular family, that the Kohanim came. I'm reading here from the Art Scroll. Each of the Kahatites should be appointed to do a specific service, and they should be so organized that they will approach the tabernacle in an orderly manner. Otherwise, they will compete with one another, and in their rush to be first, may jostle one another and desecrate the tabernacle, thereby bringing death upon themselves. So let me just finish the thought. When I looked at that last sentence, the sentence reads again, I'm going to read it to you in my translation, but they shall not come to cover the ark. Kivalat HaKodesh, as these holy arks are covered. The Levites can't do that. That can only be done by the priest. Once it's covered, packaged, then they could carry it. So the laws concerning carrying the vessels concludes, but they, the Kahatites, shall not go in to look as sacred at sacred objects, as they're covered lest they die. And now here I wanted to show the methodology. When it says they shall not go in to look as the appurtenances were being covered, the Hebrew word for being covered is kvala. Bala means to swallow. It's a poetic kind of word, even though it's in another way, it doesn't sound so nice, but they're not to go in as what is swallowed, as what is covered, as the appurtenance is covered. Here's the key, and here's what we write. Kevala, whose root is bala, may be understood more deeply as meaning consumed. Now, one could read this, and this is certainly the simple interpretation. You can't go in when the object is being consumed and being covered, the holy object. But the other way of reading it is, and this is kind of the mystical approach, that swallowed may be referring not to the object, but to the allure of holiness. In other words, while kivala, that word to cover, refers directly to the sacred objects, it could homiletically refer to the Kahatites. Here, the Kahatites had reached the pinnacle of importance. They're going to be carrying the ark. And the way we're reading it now is, of course, they're not the ones who are going to be folding up, disassembling these holy objects and then putting them and roping them off so that they could be carried. They're not the ones to do that. They're not to be the ones to see as all of them, kivala, are swallowed up, are covered, are swallowed up. But I want to read it that they should not be involved in their responsibility as they are swallowed up by holiness. In other words, that the object that we're talking about on a homiletical perspective is not the ark, but it's the Kahatites themselves. That when they're doing what they're doing, they should not be caught up with that grandeur. They should not be caught up thinking, my goodness, look who I am. And there's a Talmudic portion that illustrates how the quest for holiness can lead to danger. And we see this in everyday life. We see people who are And I'm a rabbi, and when one is a rabbi, it's a certain position of power. A doctor is in a position of power, telling us and directing us what we should do to maintain our health. Teachers are in a position of power. Soldiers are in a position of power. Wealthy people are in a position of power. What do you do with that power? And that's what the Kahatites are being warned about. You are in a position of power. You're carrying the ark. Don't be swallowed up by that holiness.
Was Uzzah a Kahatite?
I'm sorry, Zalman.
Was Uzzah a Kahatite?
Uzzah?
Uzzah, who got killed because he tried.
Right.
Was he a Kahatite?
I don't know the answer to that, but that's one of the most complicated. You're
Why
right.
did he get killed? Because he tried to.
Yeah, it's another story. It's a big question. He touched the ark and he was killed in one of the books. So, yeah, I'll just, surely, what time is it now? It's 11:04. I'll just conclude by saying that Moses and Aaron are here reminding the Kahatites of the danger of unfettered holiness. It could lead to arrogance. It could lead to a distortion of spiritual values. In other words, even holiness requires order. Even holiness itself needs to be sanctified. Holiness can be desecrated. The greater the power, the greater the possibility of taking the power that one has given and using it inappropriately. In a certain sense, I think it's easier to be ethical when one is powerless. And this is certainly true for the Jewish people for 2,000 years. When we were not sovereign, we didn't have an army. So we were the ones who were most vulnerable. When powerless, it's easier to be ethical. But when you have power, achieving a level of ethics of power, that is not simple. So this is an example of a sentence where it says, tell the Kahatites they shouldn't be there as the holy ark. Let's talk about the ark is swallowed up, is packaged. What we're arguing, it means it doesn't refer to it does refer to the object, but there's another underlying message. It's referring to the Kahatites. Make sure that they're not taken by their holiness. Make sure that they got their feet on the ground. One of my most favorite passages in the Talmud asks, what is greatness? Greatness is b'makom gedulato sham anvitanuto. Greatness is where in the place of greatness, there's humility. I don't know if you follow basketball, but there is a player on the Boston Celtics. I won't mention his name. He's an excellent player. And they beat the Philadelphia 76ers in 7 games. I'm sure this is on your mind, but they beat him in 7 games. And in the last game, this particular player, who's their best player, one of the best players in the NBA, in the league, out of his first 14 shots, he made only 1. That's not too good. And then when it came to crunch time, he put in 4 long shots that were worth not 2 points each, but 3 points each. And they won the game. The Celtics won, they won the series. So they were interviewing him. I don't want to mention his name. And they said, wow, you really believe in yourself. You missed 13 out of 14 shots, and then you're taking these long shots. And he said, well, I am one of the greatest players in the world. That's what he said. Guess what? They're now playing a series against the Miami Heat. And the Miami Heat, they were rated the lowest. They were the 8th in the playoffs, and the Celtics very high. And guess what? this player is doing miserably and his team has lost the first 3 games. They're playing the 4th tonight. When he said that, I said, be careful. Be careful. You're caught up in it. It's not healthy. Not healthy. And on the other hand, last night, I'm sure Arnie's enjoying this. There's this fellow who plays for the Denver Nuggets. I know all of you are enamored by this. His name is Jokic. He's like he's a very big man, 7 feet, and he's broad, but agile, nimble. And, most people, when they shoot long shots, they jump. He doesn't jump. His feet are on the ground and he puts his hands over his head, Carl Braun style, and he shoots. He made like an unbelievable shot off 1 foot. He was clearly the best player, and they're interviewing him. He was so honestly self-effacing, giving credit to others. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And that's what I think there could be this message. Hey, Kahatites, you given the highest honor. Don't go running with the honor. Be careful. The Hebrew word for honor is kavod. Kavod could be spelled kaved. It's heavy. Honor is a heaviness. And
you always like your favorite phrase, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, the same thing. You keep bringing that up also.
Yes. Any thoughts on this, anyone? Sharon, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm fine. Yeah. A very interesting talk. It makes sense in the way that, in a way, it must have been almost a relief that the Kohen was going to unpack the ark, because then the others don't have to worry about the responsibility of it.
Yeah, there is a very clear division of labor here, which is quite something. And to hear the Bible speaks in the rhythm of the words, which some scholars think point to a multiplicity of editors and authors. I would argue no. There could be one editor, but depending upon the subject matter, the language is going to be different. We in our lives, we could speak in one situation in one way and in another situation in another way. It's not unusual. But again, I keep stressing that here, if you'll take a look at it, it's chapter 4, sentence 20. It's one sentence. They should not come in to swallow up, to unpack and pack. That's not what they should do. And that's what it means. That is what it means. But I'm trying to understand it homiletically, not according to its literal interpretation, that when they do this, let them not be swallowed up by their holiness. Let them not be. Robert, you dealt with this, I guess. I'm sure you can write a book on when you honored people at Bonds, Robert, that there are different personalities in the way they handled. I see you're smiling.
For sure. Beverly will vouch for me and Ted.
Although I do remember my mother, God bless her memory, she was such a humble person. There was only one time that she was honored. She was honored, and it was a little in Borough Park, her local woman Zionist chapter was called Emunah, honored her. And my mother, she had an honesty, and I actually have this on tape. She gets up and she says, when they wanted to honor me, this is a little nothing, but she said, when they wanted to honor me, I said, no, I'm not interested. I was resisting. And I finally took it. Then she said, I want everybody here to listen to me well. When they want to honor you, take it. It's there is something nice to it. I remember, I remember Debbie Jonas or Howard Jonas, when they first were becoming very successful. So they were honored in the shul, and Howard said, I didn't want this honor. And then he said something like, yeah, but here I've got video cameras taking video of this. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being honored. And I think honor can push one to do good things. It's not a a bad thing, but everything within its proper limits. And the Jokic way, this NBA player, Arnie, did you notice that last night? You saw it? What do you think, Arnie? You're on mute.
He's also a player who makes the players around him better.
Right.
We kept saying that.
That's true. There are players who everything has to revolve around them, and there are those who really try to divvy it out, and that's the sign of real leadership. So on that note, I just want to bless all of you. I hope to be on next week. We will just arrive. I'm going to try, and we'll let you know next week. No, actually, we're going to arrive now. My head is somewhere else today, but we're gonna give it a try. So, anybody? Final word? Just want to send you my love. Just take care of yourselves.
Abby?
Ellen, take care of yourself. And Arnie, enjoy the wedding. Stay in the moment.
Javi, are
is
you
it gonna be-
taking honors? There were years when you wouldn't accept any honors.
Right.
Have you changed your mind about taking honors?
No, it's not. And it's not
Your own lesson of taking, your
Oh, yeah.
own encouragement for others to take honors.
Yeah.
You are not taking them. For another time, maybe you'll explain why.
Truly,
you on the
I
spot.
just don't. Truly, I don't believe I deserve any of that. But you should take the honors.
Yeah.
You should take the
Yeah.
honors.
I was thinking that very refusal to take an honor or criticism of an honor is an honor in itself.
One more time, Viv. Can you repeat
I was
that?
thinking of that very often some of the honors are not appropriate. And when you refuse to take that honor, that in itself is an honor.
Yeah. Although, Bev is Vivian, it's, when when you were at doing your great work in at the JCC and Tenafly, and they honor people who, there is something to what Bev said. It's a responsibility. It's, yeah. I remember when the shul honored Toby and myself when we were leaving officially the shul in 2015. Thank God for Rev Stephen. Thank God every day. I get emotional when I think about our Rev Stephen. I really think that when you look at the country, everybody has their own particular taste. And so I think Rev Stephen is the best pulpit rabbi, but I think across the country, rabbis will tell you that if you had to choose 5 of the top pulpit rabbis in the country, I think Stephen would be one of them. For me, he's the top. I mean, I realize everybody has their own preference. And, by the way, I feel the same way about Ezra and Bracha and Sarah. Just, but anyways, at this, it just so happened that I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I don't know if you remember. My father died that night, so I was in Israel, and yeah. Anyway, I love you all, and
one last word, Rav Avi, it's Judy.
Yes.
I want to wish you and Toby a wonderful trip, and to remind you that our first trip to Israel, when you were my tour guide then with Toby, we went on Sabina Airlines, and our first stop was Brussels.
yeah. Do you remember that?
Avi, where do you stay when you go to Israel?
We basically stay with our daughter in Efrat. Although now we're going to try to be in Tel Aviv for a few weeks near Dove in Shembi. And we have friends in Jerusalem. So I love Tel Aviv. I especially love Tel Aviv. So, although I did read that there's a new program to try to get immigrants to settle in Jerusalem, I guess the feeling is they want to make sure that there's a mass of Jews who are living in Jerusalem. And again, I'm so grateful to Riverdale, but I really think the future, in broad terms, I think the future for our people, I think, is Israel. And Arnie, we got to get you to Israel. Got to find a way. You want to go, God willing. Love you all really so much. And I hope you enjoyed it today. It's a little slow plotting this kind of work, but if you pick up, there are books out there that have the artistry of the tabernacle and its different holy objects. And it's all beautiful. It all has its beauty. Estelle, my Estelle, take care. Tovala, hard to say goodbye to you. Take care, everybody. Fern, enjoy your lunch.
Have a wonderful trip.
Right, Elaine, take care. Viv, Ruby. Bev,
Have a safe trip.
Thank you. Love you. Shalom.
Hudson Bay to everybody, and Rob Steve, Rob Avi. Have a wonderful trip. Regards to Toby.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a safe trip. Have a safe trip.
Thank you, Zan.